world because, but we're going to let stuff go on because at least we're Christians. We know Jesus. And if we mess up, Jesus will forgive us. This was their attitude. But Paul says, I wasn't talking about the immoral of the world because, well, if I was talking about them, if you are to separate from the world, then you would cease to exist. See, God has not called us out of the world. He's called us to go to the world. Let me see if I can make that clear. Jesus says, go ye to all the world and preach the gospel to every creature. Listen, you can't effectuate change if you are only in behind the four walls of the church. That kind of cool right there. Let me say that again. You can't help nobody. You can't impact nobody if all you do is come to church on Sunday. Can I get witness in here? Brothers and sisters, we are called not to be like the world, but we are called to go to the world and tell them about a Jesus who is able to change lives. Says, if I told you, he said, if you were to go out of the world, he said, if you were to separate from the world, you would have. See, and the problem with the church today, brothers and sisters, is that many of us are we're so wrapped up in what goes on inside the building.
My Lord, my Lord.
We're wrapped up in what goes on in the church, and we're trying to make the church this and that, and nothing wrong with making the church this and that, but we got to realize that there's a harvest out in the community that needs to hear about Jesus. Can I get a witness in here? Paul says, here's what I meant. He says, I wasn't talking about the folk that's in the world, but here's what I'm talking about. Now let me tell you, verse 10, don't hang out with people who call themselves Christians.
Watch yourself, Reverend. Be careful. Be careful. Be careful.
Folk who classify themselves as Christians.
Yeah.
Shout on Sunday.
Yeah.
Everyone is here. Roll around on the floor on Sunday.
Yeah.
Come on, somebody.
Yeah.
They look churchy. Can I get away with it? Come on. They got on their bags. Come on. They got on their black suit. Come on here. They look good. They look super saved. But brothers and sisters, don't you ever judge a book by its cover.
Super saved. He said.
Super saved. Can I get away with it here? Everything that glitters ain't. Can I get away with it here? Because yes, and someone said, oh, preacher. You can't judge nobody's salvation. That's a lie. Because the Bible said you will know a tree by the fruit it bears. Can I get what is in here? If you are saved, if you are a follower of Jesus, then there are some sign of the show. Can I get what is there anybody here that can testify that since you've been saved, you don't cuss like you used to cuss? Listen. And I'm not saying, by the way, I'm not saying I'm perfect because I'm messed up from the floor. But I am saying that every day that I live, Jesus is working on me.
You in it now, Reverend?
You got to be careful who you sit next to. Because, let me tell you something. It may not be, and let me just say this, it may not be sexually immorality or sexual immorality, but it may be gossipers in church. It may be people who only talk about the church and who come to church who camouflage like they Christians and camouflage like they went to church, but inwardly they're here, but they really ain't here. They with us, but they're not a part of us. And the reason here, and then these folks who are underhandedly trying to start conflict, be careful about the folk that are around you. line. Listen, cut the cord. Am I doing all right this morning? Paul says that I'm telling you, get rid of the stuff that's in here. See, because we can't focus on the outside until we get the inside right. Because the church or the world is watching the church. And it ought to be that the world is influenced by the church and not the other way around. There ought to be, let me say this, there ought to be a difference when people come into the church of God. And I'm saying this, I'm being serious. Listen, your faith ought not to be superficial. You being a follower of Jesus ought not to be a Sunday morning thing, but your faith ought to be an everyday thing. Can I get a witness in here?
It's all right, Reverend.
Let me get out of here. One more thing. Paul says that what we got to do. Now, let me say this. I need to go here for a second. When we talk about church discipline, it doesn't mean that when a person makes one mistake, we automatically exclude them. That's not the Bible. You don't automatically exclude somebody unless they refuse to repent. So says Matthew 18. And there's a process you go. First of all, you go to that person privately and talk to them. And then after that, you take 2 or 3 more witnesses that every word may be too extravagant. But if they refuse to listen, then you take them to the church and then you deliver them over. You don't just sit here and say, oh, well, you sin or you did this or you did that or you did the other and you can't believe. Listen, if someone makes a mistake, Galatians chapter 6 verse 1, if anyone is overtaken in any fault, you be a spiritual, restore such a one in a spirit of meekness, consider yourself. In other words, in order for you to correct somebody, you better have your life in check.
So in other words, shut your mouth.
Because any of us at any day can fall. And when it's in here, you better thank God today, brothers and sisters. That's why we don't want to judge anybody who makes a mistake. Can I get witness in here? All right, let me move. Not only must the church take responsibility for its own actions, but finally, this is what we got to do. We got to let God judge the folk outside. This is what the text says. Our job is not to go out holding up picket signs. And you know what I discovered? People come to church and many times they hear condemning sermons from the pulpit and they are hurt. You don't know what they're going through. Can you wait in here? We got to be very careful about looking down on people who come in the church. Can you wait in here? Who don't look like us. Can you wait in here? Because they listen. That everybody that come in here don't want to sin. There's some folk that want to get their life right. Can I get witness in here? And sometimes we turn people off by what we say out of our mouth. Can I get witness in here? Here's what I'm trying to say. Shut them out. I didn't say it the way I felt it, but now I need to just say what Paul is saying to the Or folk got the Bugs Bunny spirit. What are we supposed to do? Put people that come into the church, but bruised by life. You want the answer? Oh, yeah. Play the witness in here. Play the witness in here. Don't talk about them, and don't talk about, oh, they dress too short. Your dress too short at one time. Play the witness in here. Don't you dare act like, don't you dare get boastful, brothers and sisters. Listen, hug them. Next time you eat, love them. Can I get a witness in here? Because Jesus said, by this shall all men know that you are my disciples.
Yeah.
When you have love one for another.
Yeah.
Now, brothers and sisters, what I need to tell you is that loving people, that's difficult. That's a difficult job. But brothers and sisters, it's a doable job. Can I get a witness in here? But not only must you love people, but then, brothers and sisters, you must engage them. You got to embrace them. Is there a witness in here? You got to tell somebody that I know you've messed up. I know you've done your own thing, but I know somebody who's able to change lives. Is there a witness in here? Is there anybody in the room that can testify when you came to Jesus? I'm so glad he didn't condemn me. I'm so glad